Hello, fellow readers. My name is Violette, and welcome to my little corner of booktube here on Violette's Book Days. Today, for Poetry Thursday, I'd like to once again look to the Victorian poets as I'm participating in the booktube reading event called Victober, where we focus on writers of the Victorian era. Now, as I've lived in Australia for decades now, most of my life, I'd like to discuss the poet Henry Kendall, who was one of the most significant Australian poets of the Victorian period. But if you do want to skip straight to the poems that I'm going to read to you, you can use the video chapters to skip through this first bio part and maybe come back to it afterwards. Or you can just watch it right from the start. I'm happy either way, if you stick around. So, Henry Kendall is mostly known for his lyrical and sometimes melancholic descriptions of the Australian bush, as well as poems about his own personal experiences, which you'll find out soon are quite tragic. He was born in 1839 into a family near Ulladulla, that's New South Wales here. This is important because he spent his childhood in the coastal and bush environments that would become one of the great subjects of his poetry. Interestingly, Kendall had very little formal education. He was instead a prodigious reader, someone who was essentially self-taught, which gave his perspective a unique quality. Now, to make a living, he worked a series of jobs as a clerk, a journalist, and a civil servant, all the while writing and publishing as well. So his career is anchored by three main collections of verse. The first one was Poems and Songs, which came out in 1862. The next one was Leaves from Australian Forests, came out in 1869. And last of all, Songs from the Mountains in 1880. Part of Kendall's story, like I said before, does become quite tragic. His life was defined by really devastating combination of poverty, severe depression, and also a long-running battle with alcoholism. So he experienced a period known as his dark years, which really was catastrophic for him as it included the death of two of his young children. And then there followed his descent into addiction and even a brief period of institutionalization. So when you read his work and you encounter this sense of melancholy, it's not just a literary device. He was writing from a place of genuine, profound personal suffering. Today, though, I'll focus on his more positive works, although they do one touches on a bit of sadness. Well, as the last two videos I did for Poetry Thursday were a little bit more depressing already, as I've said. So what makes Kendall's poetry so striking, especially for its time, is its musicality and its intense focus on the distinctive Australian landscape. So he wasn't trying to make the Australian bush look like a European landscape, as some of the other poets at the time were. He was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first, to really capture the specific atmosphere of the coastal rainforests and the deep shadowed gorges. In essence, he gave voice to the landscape. Thankfully, his story does have a bit of a measure of peace, as later in his life, he managed to find some stability. He got a job that really honestly sounds perfect for him. He became the forest inspector for the Clarence River District. So the perfect job where he could be in the environment that inspired him. But unfortunately, his health had never been strong. And this weakened him further, being in this job, because he needed to ride in all sorts of weather. So even the crummiest weather, the coldest, the wettest, he would have had to been out in. And then he did catch a severe chill, which later then developed into consumption, which is today known as tuberculosis or TB. And then he died in Sydney on the 1st of August, 1882, at the age of 43. Really young. So if you're exploring Australian literature, Henry Kendall is a name you should come to know. He was one of the first to portray the sound and feeling of the Australian bush into lyrical verse. Now, before I read out the poems I thought I'd let you know about some beautiful nature audio recordings that you might like to listen to as I read, or maybe afterwards, especially if you're not familiar with the different sounds and birds and what you can hear in the Australian bush here. It does depend where you are in the country. It does change. And of course the time of day as well. Now, the first poem I'm going to read to you is about the Australian native bird called the bellbird, or the bell miner. And I highly recommend the video from the channel Wild Ambience, and I'll link it in this description box below, as well as a video from ABC Science. Now, ABC is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation here in Australia, and it's a fantastic selection of TV shows, podcasts, radio, all sorts. Amazing. So the first recording is in a paddock next to a small farm dam, and it's recorded at dawn. And dawn, as you probably know from wherever you live, is when the birds just go crazy. It's when you hear most of the bird sounds. It's in the morning, and of course in the evening as well, but the morning is the best. I think that one also included, you can hear, because it's really good audio equipment. You can hear the flies as well, the dreaded flies here, especially in summer. The third video, also from ABC Science, was recorded in the Bushneo Creek in Wadawurrung country, so that's west of Melbourne. And in this one you can hear magpies, kookaburras, and plenty of other birds and frogs as well. Now on to 3 of his poems. The first one I'll read to you is also one of his most well-known and celebrated poems during his time and even now. It's called Bellbirds. By channels of coolness the echoes are calling, and down the dim gorges I hear the creek falling. It lives in the mountain, where moss and the sedges touch with their beauty the banks and the ledges. Through breaks of the cedar and sycamore bowers struggles the light that is love to the flowers. And, softer than slumber, and sweeter than singing, the notes of the bellbirds are running and ringing. The silver-voiced bellbirds, the darlings of daytime, they sing in September their songs of the Maytime. When shadows wax strong and the thunderbolts hurtle, they hide with their fear in the leaves of the myrtle. When rain and the sunbeams shine mingled together, they start up like fairies that follow fair weather. And straightway the hues of their feathers unfolden are the green and the purple, the blue and the golden. October, the maiden of bright yellow tresses, loiters for love in these cool wildernesses, loiters knee-deep in the grasses to listen, where dripping rocks gleam and the leafy pools glisten. Then is the time when the water moons splendid break with their gold and are scattered or blended over the creeks till the woodlands have warning of songs of the bellbird and wings of the morning. Welcome as waters unkissed by the summers are the voices of bellbirds to thirsty far-comers. When fiery December sets foot in the forest, and the need of the wayfarer presses the sorest, pent in the ridges for ever and ever, the bellbirds direct him to spring and to river, with ring and with ripple, like runnels whose torrents are toned by the pebbles and leaves in the currents. Often I sit, looking back to a childhood, mixed with the sights and the sounds of the wildwood, longing for power and the sweetness to fashion, lyrics with beats like the heartbeats of passion, songs interwoven of lights and of laughters, borrowed from bellbirds in far forest rafters, so I might keep in the city and alleys the beauty and strength of the deep mountain valleys, charming to slumber the pain of my losses, with glimpses of creeks and a vision of mosses. So in that last part of the poem, those last two lines there, that to my mind is echoing his losses of maybe at that time one child or even two of his children. Absolutely tragic. So charming to slumber the pain of my losses. So nature can really help with that. Okay, the second poem. It's called At Dusk. At dusk, like flowers that shun the day, shy thoughts from dim recesses break, and plead for words I dare not say, for your sweet sake. My early love, my first, my last, mistakes have been that both must rue, but all the passion of the past survives for you. The tender message hope might send sinks fainting at the lips of speech, for are you lover, are you friend, that I would reach? How much tonight I'd give to win a banished peace, an old repose. But here I sit and sigh and sin when no one knows. The stern, the steadfast reticence which made the dearest phrases halt and checked a first and finest sense was not my fault. I held my words because there grew about my life persistent pride, and you were loved who never knew what love could hide. This purpose filled my soul like flame, to win you wealth and take the place where care is not, nor any shame to vex your face. I said, till then my heart must keep its sacred seif and unconfessed, and days and nights unknown to sleep the vow attest. Yet, oh, my sweet, it seems so long since you were near, and fates retard the sequel of a struggle strong, and life is hard. Too hard when one is left alone to wrestle passion, never free to turn and say to you, my own, come home to me. And the third poem, Australia in September. Grey winter hath gone like a wearisome guest, and behold, for repayment, September comes in with the wind of the west, and the spring in her raiment. The ways of the frost have been filled with the flowers, while the forest discovers wild wings with the halo of hyaline hours and the music of lovers. September, the maid with the swift silver feet, she glides and she graces the valleys of coolness, the slopes of the heat, with her blossomy traces. Sweet month, with a mouth that is made of a rose, she lightens and lingers in spots where the harp of the evening glows, attuned by her fingers. The stream from its home in the hollow hill slips in a darling old fashion, and the day goeth down with a song on its lips, whose keynote is passion. Far out in the fierce, bitter front of the sea I stand and remember dead things that were brothers and sisters of thee, resplendent September. The west, when it blows at the fall of the noon and beats on the beaches, is filled with a tender and tremulous tune that touches and teaches. The stories of youth, of the burden of time, and the death of devotion come back with the wind and are themes of the rhyme in the waves of the ocean. We, having a secret to others unknown, in the cool mountain mosses, may whisper together, September, alone of our loves and our losses. One word for her beauty, and one for the grace she gave to the hours. And then we may kiss her, and suffer her face to sleep with the flowers. Oh, seasons of changes, of shadow and shine, September the splendid, my song hath no music to mingle with thine, and its burden is ended. But thou, being born of the winds and the sun, by mountain, by river, mayst lighten and listen, and loiter and run. with thy voices forever. Beautiful. And you can see in each of his poems, he really does twine the beauty of nature or the sounds of nature with his own personal griefs or struggles. And also, there was a new word there to me. It was the word hyaline. So I was intrigued by that. So, of course, I looked it up. It comes from the Greek word, or a Greek word hyalinos, which means transparent, and hyalos, which means crystal or glass. And hyaline substance, sorry, a hyaline substance is something with a glassy appearance. It's always great to learn new words. Well, I do hope you enjoyed your introduction to the poetry of Henry Kendall, and hopefully to some of the bird sounds of Australia. That is, if you've already clicked on the links on the nature videos I gave you. And I would love to hear your thoughts and reactions to the poems or the nature videos. Or if you would like to share something in the comments to myself or those who potentially might read the comments, maybe you have a poem or a nature video that came to mind as you listened to this. And yeah, it would be nice to learn some new things and see them in the comments. So thank you for joining me on the poetry journey. And if you haven't seen one of my other 2 Poetry Thursday videos, you can check them out and try it right now. I do plan on doing this most Thursdays, but definitely for this month, for Victober, I'm looking just at Victorian poets. After that, I'll there are so many types of poems and poets that I love. I can't wait to share them with you, and maybe at some stage, a few of my own. And it'd be nice to get some feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. So, bye for now.